Hello, I'm Deborah Sword.
Hi everyone, my name is Tyson Bankert. I want to talk to you, Deborah, about either or choices that we all seem to make. We've talked about it often, right? It depends, and the gray thinking, not thinking always in black and white. But every day I'm asked if I want to do this or that, right? But I don't want to do either or. I want to do both. I'm always in this sort of um, these these decision mode about what to do. I know we can hold more than two options at a time. We contain multitudes as people in our mind and in our behavior. So when I'm presented with just two options, I want to push against those boundaries, ask more questions, get curious, get in trouble maybe. However, the communication can be hard to rejecting the either or limit. Um, that feels like it leads me to sort of having to then use those conflict competency skills. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I agree it is a conflict competency to maybe not reject the either or, but to push the boundaries out. Either or thinking is a binary, and binary is a word
Mm,
from Old English about pairs or duality. And if you're thinking in binaries, you can really limit creative solutions. So if you're given a choice of two options and you want more choice, what do you do?
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's so great. That's so true. I often think about, that binary experience can also feel be a very isolating one, right? Because you really only have this or that, and all or nothing. And reflecting on previous experiences of what's comfortable or what others think often come up that lead me to that sort of paralysis that I feel. And simply, I have to kind of reflect on what's maybe the better choice, um, which can often feel unsatisfying, that binary. Um, I mean, I think the question should be how to make the choices better. Instead of worrying between a of either X or Y, I can start to ask, what are the other choices? What are the other possibilities?
I often find that changing the question creates a deeper conversation. So you don't have to accept the premise that it's either this or that. There are so many examples from the news and social media. We could pick almost any topic, and soon people are in one position or the other. One binary conflict that I follow is about canceling artists who commit socially unacceptable acts. It's really
Right.
interesting to me. Some are forgiven by their fans and resume their careers. Some aren't forgiven and their careers are essentially over. Another force binary that limits solutions is whether we want to have a healthy environment or a healthy economy, when the best answer is both. And the second best answer is it depends. But as soon as you start thinking it can be both, you expand the range of possible answers. Problems that are reduced to forced choices often result in decision paralysis, as you mentioned, because neither option is attractive or complete. Complex problems get reduced to rigid simplicity, and we do that because the complex problems are overwhelming. But then both choices feel insufficient. So decisions become harder because our creative thinking is limited to which of those two choices we pick.
Yeah, that's the word I think for me, choices. Especially if the options are good. In turbulent times, like I find ourselves in, I'm grateful to always have a choice. That agency that I have often talked about. Appreciating like the privilege is such an abundance. And options and agency are really important to this work. A greater selection of solutions is what we really need. In practice, in the practice that I'm often in, we call those wicked problems.
Yeah. Wicked problems are complex and they're usually based on values and identity, which are some of the hardest to resolve. They defy resolution because there's no right answer. You can have all the data, facts, and information in the world, and it won't point to a perfect solution. What you
Mm-hmm.
want is based on what you believe to be true and right, and that's based on your values. So there's no guarantee your preferred action will get the outcome you want. So imagine you have an opponent in a conflict, and that opponent is demanding you either apologize or be sued. You want more choices since you believe you've done nothing that you need to apologize for, and you're sure you would win a lawsuit at the trial, but you have better things to do with your time. So you want to expand the choices you have. How do you do that?
Hmm. Yeah, if I were given that choice, I'd work to understand what the conflict is really about, right? Really digging in to understand. Okay, so you talked about an opponent. Let's call my opponent Pat. Something has Pat upset or offended. What is it? That's the context, right? Pat is upset about something. The history of my interaction with Pat. I'm guessing that my version of the context and history will be different than Pat. So that's a question I need to understand. I want to know what's the same and what's different between our two versions of what is making her upset. If I can bridge the differences and rely on the similarities, I can diffuse the conflict.
Oh, that's so good. I'd also dig deeper into Pat's needs, interests, and intentions. An apology can have different meanings to different people. Maybe to Pat, an apology is an admission of intentional wrongdoing and you knowingly being wrong, or it's an admission of having been hurtful, whether intentional or not. So, next, I'd want to know what liability I have in Pat's opinion. Does Pat think I committed a criminal act or something else? If there's no legal principle involved, a lawsuit is an empty threat. So I'd also explore whether or not Pat's expectations are reasonable, or if I'm dealing with someone who's highly sensitive to being offended and needs to be approached carefully. That's another aspect of context, which is the individual characters or parties in the conflict.
So Pat's given me a binary choice, right? And I'm now looked at possible scenarios for expanding the choices because both apologizing and being sued are undesirable choices. So my response to Pat instead is let's talk over how we got to the point that you gave me this ultimatum of picking one or the other, apologizing or sue. I think it can lead to a more meaningful and sincere outcome.
Yeah, I'm glad you said the goal is to expand from binary choice rather than to reject the two options. Because those two options continue to exist. There's still possibility.
Right.
And if you learn what you did, maybe you really did hurt Pat. When you're given a binary forced choice, you can pick the one you like or counteroffer with reasons for expanding the options. You're making the choices better by doing it, having thoughts about a rationale that will appeal to Pat or whoever your opponent is.
Mm. I mean, it feels like work, right? If the person has given you the choice that might feel good for them at the moment, or safest. And I think the conflict owner's manual really is going to ask of you to expand those choices, do some work to kind of that scan the context, the parties, the history, the different versions, and really talking with Pat because you're in relationship, right? To come up with some options that right there is a conflict competency. So if you want to learn more, feel free to continue to subscribe, listen to our podcast, and learn a little bit more about how to handle conflict with the conflict owner's manual.
Thank you for listening. Please like, share, leave comments, and suggest topics. Thank you for listening.